Hey guys, on today's episode, we're working on my wife's Subaru Outback. Now the car is completely filthy, and on the way home from our trip, we went to the grocery store and sure enough, we got a bunch of damage here because somebody whacked the car. So we're gonna be talking about the top 3 tools that you can use to touch up your paint. Whether it's damage like this, a rock chip, or a scratch, there's some tools that you can use to apply the touch-up paint a little bit more strategically so it looks a little bit better at the same time you're protecting the paint. Now, if you're new to my channel, I have hundreds of how-to car care videos. Please click the link below, subscribe, click on the notification button so you're notified when a new video comes out. So without further ado, let's clean this car up and apply some touch-up paint. Before I could even think about touching up the paint, let's get the car outside and perform a midwinter desalting as the rims, wheel wells, and pretty much everything else is dirty from our family trip. For step 1, I chose to lift the car and remove the wheels. Now this is not necessary, but with a quick jack, it allows me to get into the tight spots much easier. So if you have one, it can be really helpful. With the wheels off, set them aside for now. Fill your reservoir with AMMO Boost and AMMO Brute. Coat the area, focusing on the wheel wells and desalting the suspension, axle, calipers, rotors, and so on. Repeat the same steps on the engine compartment and the body of the car. Allow a few minutes to soak, loosen, and dissolve the salt. While it's soaking, agitate the suspension and brakes with a wheel brush. Now, I've said this in the past, this is extremely therapeutic, so just enjoy the process. Next, add 4 to 5 microfiber towels to your bucket, 3 to 4 squirts of AMMO foam, and fill with water. Then, coat the paint in door jams with Boost. It's important to brush the jams with Boost and allow it to soak for 2 minutes and then rinse. If you're using a power washer, just remove the tip and allow the water to trickle along the door jamb to avoid spraying the interior. Then rinse the paint. Next, I use my wheel boss to clean each wheel. Apply the all-new AMMO Plum to the rim. Now, this new version is better at removing stubborn brake dust. It doesn't actually turn purple, it is purple. This is a completely different technology. For more information, click the link above. Next, dry the paint and jams with a damp microfiber towel and AMMO hydrate. Install the wheels, lower the lift slightly, and then torque the lugs before pulling the car inside. Okay, now the car is clean, we're ready to address the touch-up areas and certainly the damage. Now, the white spots that you see here is what's called paint transfer. When the object hits the car, whatever the color of the object is, goes onto the car. In this case, you can clearly see that it was white. Whoever has a white car, whacked or smacked into the side. And it looks like it's a glancing blow because it's not super hard, but there are some dents over here, so who knows what happened. There's a little bit peeling off over here. I'll show you in a second. Now, there's 2 ways to remove this. One way is with a chemical, and the second way is with abrasion or mechanical. So chemical or mechanical. In this case, what I like to do first is use a chemical. This one that I use here is Goof Off. You can get it at Home Depot. It's relatively cheap. And the reason I don't do it all the time, so I'm not saying it's a rule, but in this case, it's okay on this particular paint. We've talked about this in the past when I'm doing my ATA Ammo Training Academy. When we get really deep, I'll put a link up here if you're super nerdy on it. If not, you can skip this part. But basically what happens is if you put a chemical on, let's say, single stage paint or sensitive paint or soft paint or kind of quirky paint, the paint swells and contracts, swells and contracts. And if you do that rapidly, sometimes it doesn't go back into its normal shape. That is a very short version of a very long explanation that you can see. In this case, because it's a newer car, I think we'll be fine. So what you want to do is take your towel here, just pour a little bit over, put your glasses on, of course, because you're working with chemicals. Now you have a little spot right there, and you're just going to go in and lightly wipe. Now, once I do this to the rest of the white paint transfer, what's going to be left behind is a few marks and nicks and scratches. So behind that, what I'm going to use is mechanical. In this case, I'm going to use microfiber cutting pad, a stronger compound, and just lightly get in there. But the challenge is going to be that there are chips and bends and cuts and all kinds of things from the impact that the twisting of the machine itself may actually flick off more of those touch-up areas. So you have to be a little bit careful. So step 1, chemical, step 2, mechanical, and then you can remove it. This needs to go to a body shop to be 100% perfect, but for now, it's 80% less annoying to look at. However, at this point, we do need to protect the Outback's open wounds with touch-up paint. To do this properly, we need to keep 3 rules in mind. Okay, paint touch-up, one of my favorite topics. I get a ton of emails about it. People think it's sort of black magic, some sort of weird art, and it's not. You have to keep in mind 3 things. The first thing is this. The purpose of touching up your paint is to stop or slow the rate of oxidation so that in years to come, you don't have damage that's sort of run up your hood, let's say, for example. That is the main purpose. Most people think it's the other thing, which is, hey, I just want to make my car look better. I get it. That's totally understandable. But if you go into touching up your paint with that mentality, you're going to have some problems. You're not going to prep properly. You're not going to do things that are actually going to prevent the rate of oxidation. So in my endless analogies here, think of a cut on your hand. You put a Band-Aid over that cut because you don't want it to bleed, right? The upside is maybe it looks a little bit better. Okay, fine, but you don't put the Band-Aid on just because you want it to look better. You put it on because you don't want to be damaged. You don't want to have a scar, let's say. Same kind of concept here with the paint. Number 2, and it's an understandable one, is there's this confusion that you need to paint on the touch-up. You don't want to paint, meaning the act of actually making a brush stroke with it. And again, it's understandable to be confused there because when they give you touch-up paint, they give it to you in this sort of nail polish little brush type thing. And so I think subconsciously people think, oh, I think I should paint it on. You don't want to do that. When you do paint it on, you create these weird sort of peaks and valleys that catch the light, and it just doesn't look all that good. So in this case, rule number 2 is you need to drip it or dab it. I don't know, whatever word you want to use. I like to use the word drip it because as you drip into the chip, what happens is the paint kind of levels out. There's a bit of surface tension, and so it's a bit tighter than as if you were to paint it, and it sort of mimics the paint, meaning it reflects the light similar when you drip it versus when you paint it. When you paint it, it just doesn't look right. So that's number 2. And number 3 is kind of my favorite, is you got to know when to say when. What I mean by that is you can spend anywhere from a couple of hours to multiple days losing your mind trying to touch it up, sand it, touch it up, sand it, and go crazy versus just spending 10 or 15 minutes and using a couple of these tools, and it will look okay. But again, the primary purpose is to stop the rate of oxidation, and then secondary, it will look pretty good. But if you go down this rabbit hole, it is a very, very deep, windy road, and you can only really get maybe 5-6% better than if you just spent 15 minutes versus 2 days. So that is a very large topic, but prevent yourself, know when to say when you're touching up the paint. Keeping the golden rules in mind, here are some of the most helpful touch-up tools to apply your paint in certain situations. First is the least expensive and the simplest to use, a toothpick. Shake the touch-up tube and unscrew the brush. Next, wipe the toothpick along the dipstick to gather a raindrop size of touch-up along the tip. Here I'm using my glove as an example, but basically carefully tap the toothpick into the damage to allow the drop to fill the cavity. It's super simple and really cheap. With that said, this technique is not ideal on larger or vertical scratches as it can be time consuming to fill the cavity. Next is the Lowel Cornel paint pen. Now I used this on an old 911 that was being donated to the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. The paint was original and single stage, but it had thousands of super tiny sand blast chips all over the hood. To use this pen, drip your touch-up brush into the pipe-like reservoir and then tap the paint down into the thin needle. This technique requires gravity and tapping to work smoothly. It's great for tiny chips on horizontal surfaces like a hood, but it can be challenging with metallic paint as it can struggle to travel through the super small orifice at times. This is the Paasche Airbrush Flow Pencil that is normally used for cake and cookie decoration. It produces a thick, consistent bead for longer, deeper damage. I'll post a link in the description to the video shown here. Likewise, I probably would have used it on my G55 wagon full body key scratch video many years ago if I had known this existed. This is the Iwata Studio Series compressor with Eclipse airbrush. Now this is great for larger areas, and I like to use it on non-metal parts like plastic trim or bumpers. I used it in the biohazard car we pulled out of the woods that had scrapes and scuffs all over the lower plastic trim. But for super small and precise applications, I tend to use the Lowel Cornel paint pen or my new favorite tool, the needle and the syringe. The syringes are about $10 for 100 sterile units that come individually wrapped. The blunt tip dispensing needles come in 9 different orifice sizes and are about $10 for 45 pieces. The larger orifice might be used for something like glue, while the smaller orifice for more precise touch-ups on horizontal or vertical panels because the paint is propelled by a thumb plunger where the gravity-fed tool may not be as easy to use in that situation. To use this tool, attach the desired size tip onto the syringe, then press the plunger all the way down and suction up about 0.2 to 0.5 mil depending on how many chips or the size of the damage you need to fill. Now, the only real learning curve with the needle and syringe is how hard to press the plunger down versus how much comes out, so you may need to do a few test spots like I did on my glove here, but you'll quickly get the hang of it. These little scuff pens come on some touch-up applicators, or you can buy them separately. Once the area is scuffed up, apply the first layer of touch-up and allow to dry for 30 minutes. As the paint dries, it contracts, so make sure you apply enough to allow for this shrinkage. For those of you who want to go down the rabbit hole and wet sand the paint for a possible 4 to 5% difference, I'll have another video coming soon. But for now, keep the 3 rules in mind and use these tools to lay down a flat, even layer of protection. Okay. Once you're done with the needle, make sure you discard the tip in a plastic container to avoid poking yourself or someone else in the disposal process. With the touch-up drying, I use my time to quickly clean the inside of the kidmobile by first dislodging the dirt, wrappers, and who knows what else from under the seats with compressed air. On a normal or regular detail, meaning a car that hasn't been hit like this one here, I would typically work on the interior first to allow enough time for the seats and the carpet to dry while I was working on the outside of the car. Obviously, this is not a normal detail because of the damage, so I wanted to work on the outside first so that the paint would be clean for the touch-up process and use the drying time to clean the interior for efficiency. With the interior now clean, and after the 3 thin layers of paint were dry, I applied the clear coat with the provided foam sponge applicator. The provided clear coat and the special sponge tend to lay down the clear a bit more flat, so most of the time I find it unnecessary to use my special tools, but just adjust the technique if needed. Same idea as before, make sure you use the sponge in a dab type motion instead of a brush stroke. While 1 or 2 layers of clear are drying, I switched needles to a thicker orifice to apply glue to the broken black plastic trim. This is a great way to get into tight areas. Once the 3 layers of paint and 2 of clear were dried, I finished the job by applying 2 coats of the all-new AMMO Reflex. This protection is focused on water sheeting chemistry, and it's applied with a microfiber applicator because of its thick adhesive consistency. We're in production now, so please sign up if you'd like to be in the queue and notified when it's ready to ship. And after the first layer, I applied AMMO mud to the tires and the trim while the paint was setting up. After the second coat of Reflex was applied, I pulled the Outback outside to see if I could live with the touch-up before it goes back to the body shop in spring. All right, guys, one behind the camera right now. I finished up. Reflex looks amazing. I did some touch-up here, with the mud on all the black trim. It looks really good. Wheels look great, but more importantly, come back here. You can still see there's a huge dent, which I'm gonna have to play with later. I go to a dent guy right there. But the bang or the hit or the whoever, whatever happened in that parking lot, the scuff, I was able to touch all this up here and protect it, put some clear coat on it. Does it look perfect? No, that's the whole concept. That's sort of part of the whole golden rules. This one looks actually borderline perfect. You can't even see it. This was black right here, and there was some more damage down there. So that touch-up looked good. Touch-up all around here, really good. That's kind of the rough spot, but if you step back 2 or 3 feet, other than the dent, you can't really see the part where you're missing paint. But more importantly, it's protected, it looks a lot better, and I saved myself a trip to the body shop. Again, if you want it perfect, go to the body shop. I will have to do it at some point before I sell the car. I might try and get this dent removed. I don't know the extent. That might be a little bit too harsh to remove a dent, but who knows? We'll give it a shot. Otherwise, it's looking pretty good, and the car is ready to go. But more importantly, my wife is happy. That mark is gone. From this angle here, you can't even barely see it other than the dent. Everybody's happy. The baby's healthy. Life is good. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.